nobody should be homeless. And I'll tell you a story about one family that I helped. There was a young man, his girlfriend, and their 2 children, Pops and Tanya, and their 2 children. They had been living in their car for over a year, even in the wintertime. And when I found out about it, I was like, I cannot believe they've been sleeping in their car in the winter. So I called the county, and Justin is right. They weren't homeless because a car is a roof over their head, and they could not get any assistance. So I called my friend up who has some rental property, and I said, Robin, can you please let them stay on one of your properties? I'll even put the down payment down. And if you can just reduce their rent, because they work at the car wash up there in Warrensville. You know, they make $3 an hour, $3 and some change. They can't afford rent. So Robin did that. The only way the county would help that family is if they went into the homeless shelter. And then they had to separate. So the man had to go here, leave his wife and 2 children over here. And they were like, because we heard people get killed or hurt in the homeless shelter. So we refused to do so. They would rather sleep in their car than to go into a homeless shelter. So that's another issue we have to address anyway, the safety in the homeless shelter. The county would not give any services to them because they were not homeless. So I took stuff out of my house. A county worker took stuff out of his house. Robin let them move in her house, which they're still there. But these 2 little girls had to go to school every day. So they were going to school from their car. Imagine trying to learn when you haven't had breakfast, you don't even have a bed, and you're staying in a 1980s Cadillac. That's what our families are dealing with on a regular basis. And I know my time is up, but I know another issue we must address is this issue of people losing their homes because they cannot afford their property taxes. Ms. Freeman lost her home because her taxes were behind. It was sold. And the issue if when you're behind on your water and sewer bill, they can sell your home from you. We have to stop that. You should not be losing your homes for those reasons.
To answer your question, yes. But let me tell you something. As you know, I was the I was the Intergovernmental Affairs Officer for the San Francisco Housing Authority, okay? So I tell you that because experience matters, people. When you hear people say that, you know, we got too much experience because they don't have it. All right? So let me tell you something. Right now, people, right now, there's 46, thanks to Biden and the Democrats, there's $46 million to stop people from being evicted. $46 billion. Of that $46 billion, only $3 billion has been spent so far. So the money's there. So if you had a mayor who understands this problem in the city of Cleveland, the mayor would set up and work with our housing court judge over here, and let's figure a way to get the money into the hands of those landlords so they can stop these people from being evicted. I learned from my mentor, Willie Brown, that money is never the problem. It is the will for people to do the right thing. As we sit here right now, there is $43 billion in place right now to stop people from being evicted and out on the street. But you got a mayor with the Kelly Jackson administration down there that is not spending the money in our wards and in our community to stop people from being evicted. $43 billion is there. So when you're looking at somebody with the experience that I have, I could pick up the phone right now and call Governor DeWine and say, Governor DeWine, let's figure out something, because I've got that relationship with him. Senator Portman, Senator Brown, who I was his council person for 8 years, Congresswoman Marsha Fudge, who was the secretary. This is the relationship that I have with these individuals on both sides of the aisle, both on the Republican and on the Democratic side. That's the type of mayor you need down at City Hall.
Thank you. The simple answer to the question is yes. And as you're evaluating candidates for mayor, it's real easy to say you're for something or you're against something and talk about the stuff that you would do. But here, we have a really good opportunity to look at who's actually done things for people facing eviction. We are all familiar with the idea that a criminal defendant has a right to counsel. But we've never had that right for people who are losing their home until I introduced legislation and passed legislation ensuring right to counsel for low-income individuals with children in those households. Children who would be displaced from the house, have to move schools. It would disrupt the entire family. The breadwinner would have a difficult time with their job placement and everything else. This was critical legislation. It was put forward, and it wasn't a program. It's not something that we put forth and put some money towards a program. When we declared a right, we declared something that was going to outlast me as council president, me as mayor, and it's going to be for generations of mayors and generations of council presidents. And it's going to make a lasting impact. Eviction causes poverty. Eviction causes children to have to hop from schools. Eviction causes adults to have to couch surf while they're trying to get their lives stabilized again. Stopping eviction, slowing eviction, putting a plan together was essential. But not only did we declare this right, we put money behind it. We put money behind through legal aid, through United Way, to make sure that people who showed up with kids in their house, in the courtroom, we talk about systems being discriminatory, systems that lock people out. This is one of them. 90% of landlords had attorneys, 5% of tenants did. We need to level that playing field, and that's what we did. So we put money for attorneys, but we also put $5 million before these ARPA funds to CHN Housing Partners. This is a critical issue. Thank you.
All right, we're coming into the last question. People are concerned about the emergency or complaining about the low response rate of 911 calls. What are your plans to deal with that issue, and what are your views on the consent decree?
Thank you. So let's start with the issue of 911 response. When you call 911, you deserve an immediate response. Nobody is calling 911 because they're in a good place. People are calling 911 because they're in a state of crisis. Their call should not be diverted. They should not have 12 rings before it answers. There's a few things that need to happen immediately. We need to look at how those calls are routed and the technology of how it comes in. We should not have a situation where the dispatcher has to ask where you're calling from. Is it police, fire, EMS that needs to happen? The call should be immediately routed, and the training, the technology have to be forefront, the absolute pillars of making that a success. We also have to have our staff trained and properly able to handle each call. And right now we are not in a place where we are responding to 911 calls in the time that we can, because if you look at when people complain about police, fire, EMS not showing up in a timely manner, and we get those calls as council people, we all, Councilman Jones gets the same, we track back from the number that was called from. And what we found is that from the time that the car that the first responder gets the dispatch, it's a relatively short period of time. But it's that time between the call and the dispatch which is problematic. The consent decree, we have made progress. Crisis intervention training, de-escalation training, body cams, we have made progress. Are we there? Are we done? Absolutely not. Do we have a long way to go? Absolutely. But we will get there. This is the consent decree. We entered into the consent decree out of a tragedy, out of the 137 shots that were fired in East Cleveland. And when the DOJ came in, it did a thorough review. We have a plan laid out of how to get better, and we are getting better. But we're not done yet, and we will be done. We will get there. We will make sure that every element of the
Well, when we talk about when we just heard that, what they have done, well, let's talk about what they've done, because the Kelly Jackson administration has been down there for 8 years, and this problem of 911 has been a problem, people. So you want to go 4 more years of the Kelly Jackson administration talking about the same old problem? It's been the same old problem, people. For the last 8 years, it has been a problem with 911. So when someone says, tell me what I've done, well, for 8 years, this problem in 911 when you call has been the same old problem, and you've been down there, we dealing with the same old problem, and now suddenly you say, well, if you elect me, we gonna change the same old problem. All right, when we talk about the consent decree, let's talk about the consent decree. We know why the consent decree was put in place. And we know that we still are not where we need to be. And all you gotta do is look at the protest on May 30th down at the Justice Center. That's all you gotta do, the George Floyd protest, when we were down there protesting after that. And I know many of us were down there. And when we were down there, we were exercising our constitutional right. Because a man had been killed right before our very eyes. And we're there and we're protesting and we hollering at the police. Well, I wasn't hollering, but a bunch of people was hollering at the police, all right? And they were and they were doing this and that. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, tear gas comes flying our way. All of a sudden, here come the rubber bullets flying our way. Now, if you under this consent decree and you know why they suddenly shooting tear gas at us.
They ain't got no respect.
So why are they suddenly shooting these rubber bullets at us? And why are they suddenly throwing everything at us? Because they don't respect that consent decree, but when I'm mayor, they're gonna respect that consent decree.
There you go, Zach! Zach in the house! Zach in the house! You said something right there! You got 50 points for me, Zach!
That was good, Councilman. That was good. That was good. So the consent decree, I believe, as has been said already, we have a lot more work to do when it comes to the consent decree. We have a lot more work to do to make sure that the community and the police are getting along the way we should be. I was actually one of the sponsors of a plan that we have at the state level, the Community and Police Collaborative, where we have standards in place right now that Cleveland should also be following, but our city police department is not following anything that's in the state, but it's currently in place right now. So we do have a lot more work to do, and I pledge, like the rest of them, to make it better. Secondly, 911 calls. We need more staff. I was with the 911 callers a couple weeks ago. They don't have the staff, they don't have the proper training, and then we have to get back to something one of them said up here earlier. You might have a bus all the way on the south side of town, and that same bus might have to go all the way over to St. Clair and Superior because they don't have enough vehicles, they don't have enough people on the street, so you may not get service. So we need more staff, we need them properly trained, we need them routed, and we need to make sure we have the vehicles in place and the people in place to be able to go out and handle that call in an immediate fashion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to wait for Zach to come back because I want to say something to him.
Don't do it.
Oh, I gotta get him. I want to wait. Hurry up, Zach. I gotta talk to you, brother. So I'll start with the consent decree. The question was consent decree and the 911. So let me start with 911. So when it comes to this, we have to understand that even though these are workers taking 911 calls, they're still human beings. And there's a lot of trauma that people are dealing with in taking these calls. They have no training, their training is bad, the pay is bad, and as a result of it, even as a city, we have to begin to treat our city workers a lot better than we treat them. So another issue that we have is EMS and fire. You call 911, man, 3 different departments show up. So we have to bring those together so that we can truly begin to save money. Second thing I want to say about the experience issue. I'm really trying to be patient. The experience issue. What I say about it is that I know here you go. Come on, Zach. I gotta talk to you about this, man. I know a lot of people that's been doing a lot of things for a long time, but that don't mean that they've been doing it right. And even though I respect my guy, Zach been down there for 17 years. You've been down there. So it's not just you pointing at President Kelly. You have been down there for 17 years. 911 didn't just become an issue. The issue about bad policing did not just become an issue. It's more than just talking. What action are you putting in now? I can say one thing that I love about Zach is that he is present and he has been present in fighting and fighting and fighting. But fighting is not enough unless there's some success that comes from it. We have to be willing to collaborate and work together. And if we don't do that, we won't be successful. The consent decree has not been successful. I mean, I asked a question at the table on the safety committee. Has the consent decree, if we were to stop the consent decree today, would we achieve our goals? They say we're not even close to having achieved our goals in regards to the consent decree. You're talking about East Cleveland, 137 shot, Timothy Russell and Melissa Williams, right? And not only do we have an issue with policing in Cleveland, but we have so many different police districts. We are one of the most over-policed areas in the entire country. You got CMHA police, CMSD police, RTA police, Case Western Reserve police, Cleveland State Police, CPD, right? And you can go on and on and on and on.
Cleveland Clinic Police.
Right, Cleveland Clinic Police, University Hospital Police, Shaker Police. I mean, come on. So the police is not the issue. It is the cultural competency that we need to step up. It is the training that we need to step up. And the fact is that experience alone is not sufficient. Look at where we are as a city. Experience is not sufficient. You can be doing the same thing for a long time. The problem is that we have to change the direction that we are going in. Experience is not enough. Success is. Thank you.
We got to change everything completely, and other cities are doing it, and we're behind the times, right? Communication is everything. 67% of calls do not need an armed response, right? But so you need more options than just police, fire, EMS. We need to hire more and work with dispatch, right, on more substance abuse people, social workers, code enforcers, mental health specialists. Okay? So that's the 911 part of it, emergency communications. Many cities are upgrading with the times on this. I personally am for making the consent decree permanent. Okay? I signed the petition. I told some of these guys where to petition at. I was sad when I was worried maybe they weren't going to get the 15,000. The problem with this city is that the people are not in charge of this city. It's been happened time and again, whether it's the Q deal, mini stations, lead paint poisoning, all these issues we know, right? And I mean we, whether it's west side, east side, south side, all these issues we know. But we don't really get listened to at City Hall, whether it's a specific issue with signatures or public comment. So personally, I think that the consent decree needs to be permanent. Doesn't matter whether you go 2 years without an excessive force issue, 10 years, 15 years. That we need to get to where police just naturally are accountable, and we're not there yet. We are getting there, but it needs to be permanent, and we need a big culture change.
You know, I know we're going to wrap up here soon, and I think every question tonight speaks to why this election is so important. This election is about urgency, and that's why I'm in this race, because we have a culture of complacency that's a cancer on leadership in this city. Now let's talk about 911. This is personal for me. I had to bury my cousin Chris, who was like a brother to me. He was choked to death by his partner who suffered a mental health episode, and it took EMS over 40 minutes to show up. 40 minutes. Now, I say that to not to mention, not to hate on EMS, but to tell you this, that the way that we're policing our communities is broken, right? So here's what I want to do. Number one, I want to add a fourth option, 911, around mental health, right? So we can triage the right response for the right call. I want to build on what we're doing right now because of the consent decree and have a co-responder model of policing in all of our 5 police districts, that we embed social workers and mental health professionals to join our first responders for nonviolent 911 calls. Right. And in 2016, we did a pilot program on this project, and we found in the 2nd district, nearly 37% of the 911 calls did not merit a response from 2 armed cops.
Right, exactly.
So if we could have diverted that 37% call response time, it would have allowed us to increase the quality of response time for these basic quality of life calls all across the city. And lastly, it's so important that we back this ballot initiative to change the culture of our police department. And I want to say this on the record. Don't be hoodwinked or bamboozled. This is not taking power from the mayor or city council.
Yes.
If you read the legislation, the mayor and council have the authority to appoint the members of this commission. And the members must reflect law enforcement, victims of police brutality, and residents. This is about sharing political power with the people. That's how you build trust. And the prerequisite to safety in the city is trust with the people. So as your mayor, I'm willing to share my political power with you, to bring real justice and real accountability that you deserve as your next mayor. That's what I'm about.
Glad to join with my fellow candidates this evening. And I think that law enforcement, policing is the top issue in Cleveland in this election. There's no question about it. I think it's important to reflect on why there was a consent decree to begin with. Charter of the City of Cleveland, which I'm very familiar with, having been mayor, I understood then and understand now that according to the charter, the mayor of Cleveland is the chief conservator of the peace. The mayor, that's accountability. That's what we're electing here. We're electing not just management, we're electing accountability. And the absolute sad truth of this situation in Cleveland is that City Hall was not accountable. They went to Washington and said, run our police department. Come on. If you can't run the police department yourself, then get out of the way for someone who's ready to do that. And that's what happened. Except we went to Washington and said, tell us how to run a police department. The mayor's supposed to do that. It's the mayor's responsibility. Now, I had my tangle with the police department when I was mayor. They wouldn't want to work in the public housing areas. We had a strike over that. I took a firm stand. I have no trouble taking a stand. I'm ready to be the person who's the chief conservator of the peace, working with the people. I think that civilian interaction is critical because it's your police department. You're paying hundreds of millions of dollars to go for public safety. But at the same time, I'm wary, brother, of this charter amendment because I'm running for mayor specifically because I want to be in a position of being able to direct the police department in the best interest of the people of the city of Cleveland, to make it racially sensitive, make it constitutionally aware, to make it a department that is accountable to you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, come to the close on the question part of this forum. We're going to allow the candidates to have their closing remarks before we leave.
How many minutes?
A minute. Did you say one or two? Two. Oh, you were giving me one. Let me clarify that. We got one or two. I just want to say to my good friend, Councilman Jones, that you raised a good point about you have the Metropolitan Police, you have the Transit Police, you have the School Police, you have University Police. Which of them are we going to call to get a handle on the dirt bikes and the ATMs, the ATVs? ATMs another subject, thank you, that are running up and down from east to west, shooting guns in the air, terrorizing people. See, I mean, there's really a question here about whether or not the quality and quantity of law enforcement is sufficient in this city, and that's something that I'm very concerned about, obviously, and have made an issue in this campaign. But just having more police doesn't solve the issue, and I've made that very clear. We need to reorient the approach that we take to make peace, civic peace, the central organizing proposition of our community, where law enforcement is one aspect that supports that. But law enforcement in and of itself cannot create peace in a community. We understand that. We need restorative justice so that the brothers and sisters who have gone astray of the law, once they serve their time and paid their debt to society, they don't have to keep paying that debt again and again and again. You pay your debt once, you paid. You need a job. You need to make sure there's a roof over your head. Restorative justice is also a part of peace in the community. Healthcare is part of peace in the community. We need to make sure our children have access to healthcare. We need to make sure that this lead paint issue is resolved, that the children will get tested, that the houses that are lead infected are going to be either torn down or restored. We need to make sure that housing is part of that civic peace proposition. See, I view the world as one, as being interconnected and interdependent. We're all one. We're one Cleveland, one community. I'll use the power of that unity to transform our city. Thank you very much.
Trying to take my minute then. It has certainly been an honor and a joy to be in community with you all this evening. And there's been this quote that's been stuck with me throughout this campaign. It comes from my frat brother, Otis Moss III. He has this quote. He says that George Wallace had the position, but Rosa Parks had the power. And I want to tell you that because in this election, it's not about any of us on this stage. It's about all of you all out here. You have the power. This election is about you. And in this election, we can do a whole lot to make sure we turn the page to have prosperous, safe, and economically viable neighborhoods. We can turn the page to make sure we have a modern and transparent city hall that works for our children, that works for our seniors. And we can turn the page to ensure that every child inside of CMSD has the skills they need to achieve their God-given potential. Now, my name might have never been on the ballot. This is my first time running for office. But I had the lived experience as a kid who grew up on 121st and Dove, the son of a social worker, a cop, and a firefighter, but also the professional and executive experience to be your mayor. Having advised big city mayors all across this country, having worked for a $1.2 billion business, managing that business, but also fighting for public transit as a board member at RTA, working to advance new solutions for criminal justice reform as a co-founder of an organization called Hack Cleveland. I'm not new to these issues. I may be new to politics as an elected official, but I'm not new to these issues. So in this election, I ask you to join me to turn the page and build a new political movement to change this city for the next generation. Because I believe I'm part of that Joshua generation. And I owe a debt to service to you to make sure we get to that promised land. Thank you so much.
Does that work? Ladies and gentlemen, again, I'm Ross DeBello. I haven't been to this site, right, but I've been to Ward 1. I've been to Councilman Jones' events many times over the past 12 years. I know you don't know my name, right? Please check out my website, rossdebello.com. Hopefully you guys felt I answered everything genuinely and specifically. I'm running because this doesn't feel any different from 4 years ago, than 8 years ago, than 12 years ago. You know, we've got politicians up here, and we're all well-intentioned, but we need to change City Hall, right? We're not getting the value of our tax dollars. We're not in charge. Criminal justice has not been reformed, right? Felony case after felony case after felony case. Lead paint poisoning after lead paint poisoning, infant mortality. This is Cleveland, right? But the mayor and council president, they get reelected quite easily every time. Every time. If we want change, we need to change City Hall, right? I want to put in term limits. I want to put in campaign finance so we can save our taxes from flooding out to the suburbs, right? We should get the benefits of what happens downtown. We should get those benefits. They should be reinvested. We have to invest in our kids and put our kids to work in every neighborhood. So, thank you. If we want a different result, we need an absolutely different system in City Hall. We have so many systemic problems because our system is broken. So please check out my website at rossdebello.com. If you like what you see, please tell a neighbor. But please, even if you don't vote for me, take this election as serious as we've ever taken one and make one of the 7 of us earn your vote. Thank you.
You know, I was that young person that you raised. Growing up on the Huff neighborhood, growing up on Superior and St. Clair, going to Case Elementary, MLK Middle School, MLK High School. It was